My name is Amaan Ali. I'm a law student at University College London, and I'm genuinely glad to be in this room with people who have spent years dealing with the questions I'm about to raise. And I want to begin with a simple question. What does it mean to be private online? That question, deceptively simple, is at the heart of everything I want to talk about today. And I believe the answer matters to every person in this room. In 1982, Elizabeth Wheeler at Stanford built Whois for a network of a few thousand people. It was a directory, open, frictionless, no questions asked. For 3 decades, that worked. Cybersecurity enforcement tracked malicious domains, lawyers went after trademark abuses, law enforcement had somewhere to start. But the internet grew, and we ended up with 360 million registered domains. And the same openness that helped the researchers, now it helped the stalkers, the spammers, and the data harvesters just as well. The architecture had not kept pace with the world, and everybody knew it. Then, in May 2018, GDPR arrived. It did not mention who is by name. It did not need to. The conflicts were immediate. Whois published names, addresses, and emails indefinitely to anyone with no defined purpose. And that is not data minimization. That is not purpose limitation. That is just everything for everyone forever. ICANN's 2019 temporary specification was a stopgap. It bought time. A permanent registration data policy finally arrived on 21st of August 2025. But the story does not end there. So what changed? Privacy became the default. Personal data is no longer publicly visible. The public record now shows only the domain name, the registrar, registration date, and name servers. And Whois, after 43 years, was replaced. On 28th of January 2025, RDAP became the definitive source for all GTLD registration data. I'm sorry, I'm dropping all the dates. So RDAP was the first protocol designed with tiered access in mind. Different users see different data based on who they are and why they are asking. But here is where we need to be honest. RDRS, the Registration Data Request Service, is not tiered access. It is a form. You submit a request, a registrar decides whether to respond. There's no defined criteria, no enforceable timeline. And the results shows it. 3 numbers that I want you all to keep in mind. 79% of legitimate requests were denied in the first 6 months, nearly 4 in 5. 41% of the GTLD domain space is not even in the system because participation is voluntary. And when a response does come, you have been waiting 7 days, while a phishing campaign can compromise thousands of people in under 2 hours. RDRS was described as a pilot to measure demand. Fair enough, but a 79% denial rate is not just a data point. It is a signal that the system is failing. So, are we protecting privacy, or are we blocking the very actors the system was designed to serve? That is not a rhetorical question. That is the central design problem of our moment. And while we deal with that question, the EU keeps moving. In February 2026, the European Data Protection Board and the European Data Protection Supervisor issued joint opinion on the Digital Omnibus package. It directly intersects with domain registration data. The e-privacy regulation is still being negotiated, and ICANN has spent 7 years reacting. From the 2019 temporary specification to the registration data policy, reactive, not proactive. The window in Brussels is open, but it will not stay open indefinitely. I want to name the tension clearly because it gets blurred. Privacy is a fundamental right, and Article 8 of the EU Charter protects it. Doxing and harassment of a domain registrants are documented harms, not hypothetical. And a blogger who registers a domain should not have their home address published for anyone who asks. But accountability matters too. An internet where bad actors cycle through domains faster than investigators can even file a request that harms trust in a different way. That is not actually a choice between two values. It never was. The real question is who gets to know what, under what conditions, and why? And the answer is contextual integrity. Privacy is not violated per se by disclosure itself, but by inappropriate disclosure. Information flowing to the wrong context. Medical data shared with your doctor is appropriate. Shared with your employer, it is not. Who is treated a journalist investigating a disinformation network and a bulk data harvester identically? RDRS, as it currently operates, still largely does in a different way. There's no difference in how you are treated based on who you are and what you need the data for. The solution is what SSAD was trying to build, a tiered model. Tier 1 is public technical data. Anyone, no authentication. Tier 2, verified users see the organization name, country, and abuse contact. Tier 3, accredited requesters like IP professionals, security researchers. And Tier 4, the judicial access, court order, full disclosure. And where I come from, open banking and national health services in the United Kingdom already use architectures like this. So what do we actually do? 3 pillars I want everyone to keep in mind. First, universal RDRS coverage. 59% participation is a pilot, and ICANN must move from voluntary to mandatory RDRS participation for all accredited registrars. There is no justification for a 41% blind spot. And second, I know there is supplemental recommendations process that is now underway. It started in May. And that in that progress, I believe there should be automatic decisions based on verified identity, not discretionary choices by individual registrars. Identity provider testing is already underway as of May 2026. Build on that infrastructure and make the accreditation layer mandatory. So I will say another one for the second. Urgent request timelines must be separated from standard ones. 7 days for a live phishing attack is not a response time. There's a public comment process on this open right now. It should produce something with teeth. Third, ICANN needs a permanent seat at the table in Brussels, not to lobby, to co-design. A joint ICANN IDPB working group established before the next regulation passes would be a structural achievement that no amount of reactive policy can replicate. This community cannot afford another 7-year cycle. And I want to make this clear. Privacy is not the enemy of accountability. Opacity is. The SSAD recommendations were rejected in March because they were not good enough. That honesty matters. Now, what comes next has to actually work. RDAP is technically ready for tiered access, but it lacks the policy. The supplemental recommendation process is the policy window. The IDPB is writing rules right now that will shape this space for years. The challenge in front of this community is to stop building systems that protect privacy on paper while blocking accountability in practice, and build something that earns trust on both sides. That work is happening right now, and that is the challenge, and it belongs to everyone, every person in this room. Thank you.
Great job, Amaan. Any questions for him? Yes, please.
I'm John Levine. I'm an SSAC member. And I must say, I'm delighted to hear this talk. We have spent years with academics coming and saying everything needs to be private and secret and waving off the security issues. And it's nice to hear a talk that actually understands that it's an important trade-off, that to the extent that you don't have the security, you're violating the privacy of the people that the bad guys are victimizing. And one suggestion I would make is to talk to RIPE, the IP address registry, which is located in the Netherlands, has a similar RDAP for IP addresses, and they're basically, all of their information is unredacted. So presumably they understand GDPR. The obvious question is, what does RIPE know that ICANN doesn't know, and perhaps ICANN can learn from it?
I think that is a very good point. And I think example I gave, how the financial industry and the health industry in UK, even they follow GDPR. And at the same time, they also understand that this data is very important for security purposes as well. For example, financial purposes, if we become opaque with that data, no financial fraud can be traced or no action can be taken. So that is why I think ICANN should be taking the same steps and make it a tiered access where it decides who gets what on the basis of verified individuals.
Actually, another related thing is Steve Crocker has been working on something he calls Project Jake, which is a form of tiered access. And he's actually here at this meeting. And if you can find him, he would be delighted to talk to you about it because he's been thinking about the whole tiered access issue in great detail.
Thank you. I will definitely have a conversation. Thank you so much.
Hello. First of all, my name is Sharbel Shbeir. For the record, I loved your presentation. It's very good, well structured. And I have a question for you. You talked about ICANN and rules and the data privacy, data protection, which is GDPR. It was drafted in 2016. It was ratified in 2018. But before that, we have a gap. You told us about rules. It was incorporated in 1982. Before that, we have something called Directive Européenne de 95. In 1995, we started to take into consideration the privacy and data protection. My main question is, you talked about all the European law, you Conseil d'Europe, and you talked about RGPD with GDPR. Now ICANN based in US, in California basically. How can ICANN implement and enforce something abroad exists from outside the borders of US?
So that is why I mentioned that we need to have a permanent presence in Brussels through working groups. For example, I understand ICANN is based in Los Angeles, but GDPR is an extraterritorial law and it applies to ICANN as well. So ICANN is a stakeholder when the e-privacy directives are being discussed in Brussels. So all of them are extraterritorial law. It applies to ICANN as well because it has a presence in Europe. So this is how it can become a stakeholder in the process and have a conversation.
Thank you. Yes, Sebastian, please go ahead.
Merci. Est-ce que vous m'autorisez à parler en français ou c'est trop compliqué que vous preniez tous des écouteurs pour pouvoir avoir la traduction? I wanted to ask you if I can use the French language as we are interpretation, but you need your headset. All of you, please. Merci pour cette présentation. Bureau à Bruxelles de l'ICANN. Je veux bien qu'on insiste sur le fait qu'il faut qu'ils soient présents à Bruxelles, mais ils y sont. Il y a l'ICANN pourra le dire bien plus que moi qui suis un utilisateur de base. J'ai toujours du mal, et ça n'est pas du tout votre présentation qui est en cause, à comprendre pourquoi est-ce que les CCTLD européens n'ont pas fait disparaître toutes leurs données, mais seulement une partie des données qui étaient liées aux personnes physiques, puisque la question de des données privées, c'est une question des données privées personnelles, pas des entreprises. Et l'ICANN a été beaucoup, de mon point de vue, trop loin. Et donc, on est en train de bâtir un système pour essayer de résoudre un problème qui n'aurait pas dû apparaître. Le RGPD ne demande pas à ce que toutes les données disparaissent. Il demande à ce que les données privées des personnes physiques soient protégées, pas les données des entreprises. Et donc, j'ai du mal à comprendre depuis des années pourquoi l'ICANN fait un truc et que les CCTLD européens ne sont pas obligés de faire la même chose. Mais encore merci pour ta présentation.
Thank you so much. That was a great point. I just wanted to mention that, yes, I agree with you. Article 8 of GDPR, it talks about personal data, and it had to be identified to a physical person to GDPR to actually act in. And as far as the corporate data is concerned, that is why I mentioned that opacity is the enemy of the accountability and privacy. And it's not the privacy that is actually stopping ICANN to publish some data. ICANN do publish some data, for example, name, registrars, and some administrative data as well. But yeah, the more point is that it has been opaque for all the other data. And that is what I'm trying to mention, that there is no access to data even for corporate. So that is why I said that it acts as it makes you stand with Google. Even if you are a blog writer with 30 viewers and Google, a corporate giant, it acts same for both of them. So I think that needs to be changed. And that is being discussed right now. As I mentioned, there was a recommendation, 22 points recommendation that was made. It was rejected in March 2026. But because it was not good enough, there was no policy for tiered access to actually work in that. So I think that is why I said it can work. It just needs more work for that. Thank you for your point, by the way.
Thank you so much.